2022 of the Landmarks Board. Just a reminder that this meeting is being conducted both virtually over the internet through Zoom and in person here in Town Hall. Access to this meeting can be accomplished by visiting the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal. If you do not wish to join the live meeting, you can watch the live stream video on the town's website, and you can also submit any written comments through the town's website as well. The Zoom webinar is being moderated by CTV. They do have a number of names in advance who have asked to participate on various agenda items tonight. And also it's possible that if you did not submit your name, that you might, by appropriately raising your hand, indicate which agenda item you'd be interested in. Reminder to everybody speaking from the public, please state your name and the hamlet of residence for the record. The meeting is being recorded, and so please try to use the microphone on your computers as best as possible, because it can be, to take turns in speaking, because it is hard to hear if more than one person is speaking at the same time. So with that, I will just note that we are without access to an internet connection, which was planned as a resource tonight, and so we are slightly out of joint because of that. Had some mapping of mapping of properties associated with one of our discussions tonight. To begin with, on the agenda, I will try to bring the agenda up just to refresh our direction for everyone here. If in fact the agenda will come to be seen. There we are. There are no written minutes for September 20th. There is a video record of that meeting available on the town's website at the town clerk's portal for anyone who is interested. The first issue on the agenda tonight is a discussion of the Bridgehampton Historic District. Just to briefly provide some relevant background as we consider the possibility of the kind of historic district that might be proposed for the hamlet of Bridgehampton. There was in 2012, 2013, and 14 a survey done of the town historic resources by a consultant hired by the town. The shorthand reference for that study is the AKRF 2014 study. It involved looking at the historic resources in each of the hamlets outside of the incorporated villages of Southampton town, and describing them and recommending those that they surveyed that had potential for being designated either as landmarks or as historic resources in the particular area of the town of Southampton. The Bridgehampton Hamlet study looked at a number of, actually a large number of structures. For the immediate hamlet area, there were 176 houses, essentially houses, that were identified as potential landmarks or historic resources for, contributing resources for a historic district. There were others identified as well in the more outlying areas of the Bridgehampton village hamlet, in more rural settings, agricultural settings, and the like, the number of which was probably in the neighborhood of 30 something. I would have to check my references on that, but in any case, since that time, there has been little progress, but a lot of interest in the formation of a historic district. Local individuals and local community groups have spoken up about a historic district. And in 2018, the supervisor convened a meeting of interested individuals to talk about it, and he proposed that basically a historic district be defined along the Montauk Highway corridor, the village business corridor, that basically would run from on the east, the Butter Lane intersection with Montauk Highway, to the Sag Harbor Turnpike Lumber Lane intersection with Montauk Highway. I should say it was on the west that Butter Lane is, and it would run to the east to the Sag Harbor and Lumber Lane intersection, for including basically the north and south sides of Main Street, Bridgehampton, with little incorporation of any of the residential streets that surrounded that business environment. A number of things transpired since then. A map was prepared initially for the discussion of a historic district, and perhaps this map might be able to show
I just got a text, somebody was asking, could you get closer to the microphone, because Zoom people can't hear you very well.
Take the whole, yeah,
Sorry.
Thank you.
thanks.
So this was originally the map that was proposed showing Main Street, Bridgehampton. Here is Butter Lane on the west, Montauk Highway, and this is the intersection of Lumber Lane and Sag Harbor Turnpike with Montauk Highway at what is traditionally been called Bull's Head for the community. This location here is the town's Nathaniel Rogers House, the property it purchased in 2003 for historic preservation purposes. The town also owns other buildings, the community house here on Montauk Highway, located at the intersection of School Street and Montauk Highway as well. So this basic pattern seemed logical at the time, but in the meantime, since 2019, we had some meeting in Bridgehampton, but 2020 and 2021 brought a kind of COVID pause in the business of making progress with this. And since that time as well, there has been some rapid development in the community that was taking out structures in the residential neighborhoods. That was the kind of map I hope to be able to present with an internet connection to the town's GIS website tonight, but because that's not operating, I can't provide that. What I can provide, though, is a small alternative that requires a little imagination. The area of the business district that you saw on the map that was recently presented, visualized here, has involved just 3 applications for demolition in the last 9 years. 2183 Montauk Highway. This is on the west end of that area that we saw. It once was the habitat of Dan's Papers. For those who have ever driven through the village before it was demolished, would have noted the building by virtue of its very pink color that was there at the time. 2297 was a recent demolition of a 4-square house in the village, the Wallace Halsey House, that we objected to in terms of the demolition, but it was demolished in favor of a plan to construct an office building similar to 2 other office buildings located nearby. And 2339 Montauk Highway was demolished 2015, I believe. It was the project of the fire department, which wanted the vacant space. It was the old Studebaker car dealership from the 1920s. I don't know if we remember reviewing it, but it was a stucco building and had a great familiarity and sentimentality in the community. After, in the 1930s or so, it became the location of a gas supplier and service business in the community. So that was 3 of the demolitions occurred in Main Street. But looking around the greater Bridgehampton residential area, you can see the number of, let me shrink this view a little bit so we can get the full picture of it. You can see that the number of demolitions of houses and structures is much greater in the community. The most concentrated area of destruction in the community was in a road just to the east of the Sag Harbor Lumber Lane intersection with Montauk Highway on a road called Norris Lane. Basically 1920s and 1930s houses, many of them in decent shape, but redeveloped for larger and more modern amenities, and in many cases. I think this has 6 of those houses listed on that territory. Another big territory was Butter Lane, where 5 houses have been destroyed, demolished in recent times as well. And again, they were basically houses of 1870, 1880, 1890s construction, some Victorian houses as well. One of the older settled roads of the Bridgehampton residential hamlet there. And Ocean Road, another road with a large concentration of houses there. Just to take a peek at the kind of maps that AKRF did to outline potential historic districts. They provided an outline of a hamlet-based historic district encompassing the residential neighborhoods around the Main Street area. This gives you an approximate view of it. At this street here, where I have the hand cursor, that's Butter Lane, which lost 5 of its houses on one side of the street, 5 of the 7 or 8 that are listed there. The Norris Lane, this is the Norris Lane area that's there. Not every house that was just demolished in Norris Lane was listed in the AKR report as well. Lumber Lane is also one of the most historic and had been stable up until recently. 2 houses have been demolished in the past 3 years on Lumber Lane, south of between the railroad tracks and Montauk Highway. So that gives basically kind of an outline of what it is. As you can see, this there is a large concentration of what were marked as historic resources in the community. There is a certain extended view of them down Ocean Road, as one would go down all the way down to Paul's Lane. This particular house here on the corner of Paul's Lane was recently removed, and pieces of it are being stored, I think, in North Sea at the moment, potentially to be constructed in another form down the road. So there's been a lot of demolition activity. So the question for, I think, us to consider is, if we are to do the work of a historic district, there are 2 aspects to it. One is to continue with just the village business district dimension. A lot of that descriptive work has been done, and in conjunction, relying on the resources of Julie Green, the town historian. What would also have to proceed, if we were to expand that definition into residential neighborhoods, would be more work would have to be done to identify contributing historic resources, to separate them from the other houses or structures in that neighborhood. And that would require some time to do that extra work as well. So that kind of, I think, sets out as much as I can set out on this matter. Let me ask first my colleague board members if you have certain kinds of inclinations or things that you want to comment on this prospect of a historic district for Bridgehampton.
My only concern is, it seems as we talk about it, and there's, the longer it's drawn out, we get more applications for whatever areas are mentioned. I mean, a couple said, oh, we want to demolish it. We don't even know what we want to build. We're going to sell, so we're going to demolish it today. And so it seems like once the discussion starts, it needs to be serious and move it along. And I know that's easier said than done. Because the longer there's that lull that I'm concerned about the
What is
losses.
the process of landmarking? If we just did the town, what do we do? What does one do?
The process of a historic district involves the development of a recommendation by the Landmarks Board to provide advice to the town board that a historic district is recommended. It involves a number of things. It involves eventually a public hearing. It involves notifying all those within a historic district, prospective historic district, of the boundaries of it. Certainly it would involve some educational materials to present to owners about a historic district, depending upon its boundaries that might be decided on. And then after a public hearing, the town board gets to decide whether or not to proceed with it or to maybe return it for further consideration as an idea.
And if we chose to do the larger segment, we'd have to research each of these houses to see what historic contribution they had made to the town?
Well, not every house has the same
Yes,
pedigree issue.
yes.
Uh,
But we don't know that. We'd have to research and see what the pedigree of each house.
Right, it would take, we probably would be looking at, I would say, 250 to 300 properties. Many of them would be quickly probably figured out, that this is a recently built house, or this one has been so modified or whatever, it's not a classic architectural type for a particular historic idea. So, that's just an estimate.
No.
Yeah.
Just asking.
Is there any consideration to starting the process on the original footprint that you had outlined? Because we have all that information, you've had several meetings,
Most of that is done.
so we could actually proceed on that, and should we get the approval to move forward, we could then go to a second stage to expand that, but at least to start this district, because the last couple of demolitions of residential buildings that became new commercial buildings really is just, it's horrible,
Yeah.
honestly. It's very sad for Bridgehampton, and I think we
It's
should
like a
move.
parking lot. It's encroaching on a Farrell parking lot. Not that
Well,
there's
let's not-
anything wrong with the
Yeah.
developer, but I mean, just office building and office building.
So I, for one, would like to, initiate the process so that we can move this along, as Susan said, because it would be a travesty to see another building come down.
I think even in the village, there are 5 historic districts: Beach, Lewis. I mean, it was the basic one, the extension. I won't go through them because you can look those up, but there's more than one historic district. You might think of it as one, but they're actually, Wickapog is a separate one,
Exactly.
North Main. So it seems like if you have something you're ready to go, it's like if you're always, if we're all, I don't mean you, I mean us, we, are waiting to perfect it, we may never get to the end. But if we have something that's been researched and we're ready,
I think
you
we're in
know,
pretty
to
good
move
shape
on
to
it.
move now.
and then continue to expand it, I mean, we obviously want to expand it. But then it's, if you have to hold up for all the other ones that are ready to go,
Right.
and then you can see how the process plays out while you're working on, one can be in the oven
Exactly.
baking, and we could be working on getting the other things ready.
How do you all feel?
I totally agree with the idea of going ahead with what closest, but I'm curious in how close to getting that done are we? What does it have to do even to move forward the smaller district at this stage?
I think there's probably some additional research on some of the buildings that constitute that village business district. Would not take very, very long. And I think the town clerk's office has previously suggested it's willing to help the process by having the town historian, which is part of the town clerk's office, help in that work.
Good.
Okay, well, let's first try to hear from our participants here.
Yes.
We'll first try to take our guests from the audience here. And if you're interested in speaking, would you step up to the podium and provide your name and hamlet and your comments to the board?
Hi, my name is Julie Burmeister, and I live at 148 Ocean Road. I have a house that was moved there, we're not sure, but sometime in the 1800s. It was a church at one point, the New Light Church in Hayground, and then it became a school. It's on some of the early maps that I've looked at that you all have in your reservoir of knowledge. So obviously, and then I have a barn that we're not sure exactly when it was built, but we are guessing around 1870s. So I'm all for obviously including the residential neighborhood. Now let me ask you a question. It's not. I thought it was pretty close. If we, it makes sense to go ahead with, the known, what Susan said, what you have almost ready to process, I guess you could say. But Julie Green sent us a lot of information, and I was reading through it the other day, and I noticed there's volunteer groups that can be designated by you all. Is there any way volunteer groups could expedite this neighborhood process? The neighboring historic districts?
At the moment offhand, I don't see a path for that, and the kind of management of the activities of a volunteer group would be kind of problematic, I think, in this regard. The kind of thing that really has to be done is just basically research type work to describe things. And that has to be done a little bit in an organized fashion. So I think basically the idea of getting volunteers involved or providing orientation and training and all kinds of things that would go into trying to make something work probably is beyond our capacity to deal with.
You mentioned that in order to get the expanded neighborhood districts designated, we have to go back to the town board to see if they would agree. Is that what I understood you to say?
Well, at the moment, there is no formal definition. There has been only an informal presentation of the idea of a village business-based historic district. The question arose as to whether or not there were serious issues in which the residential neighborhoods surrounding Bridgehampton should also be protected. There have been voices to that effect from the community,
Yeah.
yours and others, that have presented that as an alternative, and that's kind of what we're sifting through tonight to figure what's the best path, one that would involve some delay, or one that might be expedited for the first historic district in the town of Southampton. And as the idea was suggested and offered, the strategy, do the one that's been kind of already prepared, and expand the historic district.
Yeah, but my question to
Later
you
on.
was who do we have to get the approval from to expand?
The town board designates the historic districts. It's up to them to decide whether to do it or not. They do it with a recommendation and information that might come from this board.
Any other boards?
And
Other boards that have to be involved?
there is probably a reference that will be made to the planning board as a question of impact.
And how long would that take, do you think?
Once the landmarks board gets its formal statement ready, it usually is referred, things that we are involved with and the planning board are involved with, is generally about 30 days, one meeting cycle.
Well, but the research, you said research. Seems to me most of these houses have been researched. I have maps at home from GIS that have a lot of detail on them.
The planning board has talented staff. We don't have the technology and staff assigned to us that can kind of do that kind of thing. But that stuff will proceed very quickly, I think, when the landmarks board sets the design of the district for recommendation to the town board.
So the original recommendation will come from you then?
It'll come from this board,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you don't, a year? I don't know how much time we have left.
Well, we've taken already, the supervisor of the town of Southampton first suggested this in the fall of 2018.
Yeah, he came to a meeting of ours, yeah.
So, I mean, we have time.
Well, the houses don't have time. They're going down right and left, as you had a rather lengthy list up there.
Right.
So you don't really know. It seems to me it's a tremendous job. If you almost talk like you have to go back to the drawing board, the basic drawing board. It seems to me there's a lot of information that you already have for the expanded. I'm not negating to do the Main Street first. I'm not saying that, but I'm more worried about the 5, 6, 10 years going by, and we keep talking about this and nothing gets done. Or I won't say nothing gets done. That's what I'm worried about.
I think once we define this design or scope for the district, things will begin to proceed more clearly and more quickly.
Are you ready to do that?
We're finding out as soon as we get other comments and discussion here, and we'll see if the board has a consensus, and that's the way we'll proceed.
Okay, so then it's up to us to sort of give you support.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
So
Would we have to research each house as to the historic relevance for the outlying?
Pardon?
Would we have to research each house as to the historic relevance like you would do to normally?
In a large
landmark a
district, we
house?
would have to go through each
Each one,
property.
okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah, hi, I'm Tom Watson. I live in Bridgehampton, 89 School Street, right in the downtown district. I've lived, or I've had a home in Bridgehampton for about 9 years now. And of course, I think like everybody, I was shocked in the 9 years that I've been here. Yeah, I mean, everything that's just coming down very close to me. Can you hear me? Okay. And I don't want to take too long, but I just piggyback on what Julie was getting at. I think we're just like, maybe not today, but it would be nice to have some feedback in the coming weeks or in a month or so, like what your estimation of the time frame would be for all these steps, including the first step with the downtown historic district. You said more work has to be done, so I think you used the term some work. Well, I think this board should like give us some feedback. Is it going to be a month? Is it going to be 6 months? Is it going to be a year? You know, some general framework I think, you know, we should know about. And then for the bigger, you know, expanded district, also, maybe it'd be harder to have that estimate, but give us some estimate. And I'm also worried that if we do it stepwise, then the second step will be like, oh, you know, we can do that a little more at our leisure. But as Julie said, everything's coming down, so both steps are just as important to really move forward. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, this is the first time I've come to this meeting and I realized where the log jam is. It's in these steps that you talk about. That's where it is. So I can't complain to Schneiderman, I can't complain to the board, because he's going to say, I can't do anything until I get these reports or recommendations from you. So I hate to be so brutally honest, but the logjam is here with this board. And that's why it's so important, I think, to get some sense of the timeline. I think that's what we all need. And the Bridgehampton Civic Association, of which I'm a director, I mean, we're here to support you in any way, you know, we can, whether it's writing letters, you know, to the newspapers or what have you. But again, I don't think that would help right now, because we would be basically saying, you know, writing a letter saying, hey, come on, guys. So I think it's important that we're just saying it now. So I don't think any sort of letter writing is necessary. You know, we don't want to put this board in a bad light, obviously. And I just want to end with, I also have a home in Wantor, and I'm president of the Wantor Preservation Society, and it's a historical society. And sometimes people in Wantor call us the Hysterical Society. And I always take that as a badge of honor, because that means we're doing something, we're pushing things, we're stomping our feet, we're moving things along, and I think this is what we all have to do together. You know, we really have to start stomping our feet, you know, shaking things up and moving things along. And so I hope you all help, because obviously it's all in your court. So thanks for listening.
Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comment, Tom. And
With your support.
with respect to a time sequence, I don't see this as going out a year. I see it less than that.
Okay. For the downtown.
For yes, the
And-
downtown.
And that means less than a year for you to get your report together to then get it to Schneiderman and the town board. That's sort of the time frame you're talking about.
Right.
Okay, so then hopefully like a year or hopefully sooner, but, okay. But I think those are important things. I think, you know, when we work in industry, we always have to come up with project plans, we always have to come up with timelines, and we have to live by them. And our bosses, you know, won't give us a bonus, won't give us a raise, blah, 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 you know, if we don't meet these things. And so I think it's important as groups, and even with the Wantor Preservation Society, you know, we give ourselves metrics and timelines. We don't always meet them, but, you know, we try to operate as a little business. And project plans and timelines, I think, are very important.
Um,
Great, thank you.
Thanks again. I appreciate the comments.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. And I know we've exchanged emails, so it's nice to finally meet you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we have everyone in the audience who wanted to speak. Is there may be Zoom participants? If they are, we're ready to potentially get their participation.
Yeah, we got a few people on Zoom.
Do we have anyone?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, here we go.
Hello?
Good evening.
Hello?
Can you identify yourself and your
Yes,
hamlet?
I'm Bonnie Verbitsky, and I am a director of the Bridgehampton Civic Association.
Very good.
And I've lived in Bridgehampton for over 36 years, and I'm very interested, and so are the residents around me, in keeping our hamlet charming and keeping the historic value that we have present. So we would like the board to do something faster than 6 months and help this thing that's going on in our community and in all communities, that they're buying new houses and tearing down the old. We don't want to lose our historic values and our history of this town. There are too many people who appreciate it, and we're hoping that you'll help us.
Okay, that's good to hear, and thank you for your comments. And I agree that the tearing down of the houses diminishes the historic identity of the community, and that's very important. So thanks again, Bonnie.
Thank you.
So do we have,
We have 3 more people.
Okay, there are 3 more people.
Oh, hello? Can everybody hear me?
Good evening.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Pamela Harwood. I'm the president of the Bridgehampton Civic. Sorry for the poor quality of the video. But I just wanted to say, I have to alert everybody that there were quite a few people who couldn't get into this meeting, and also that hardly anything that Ed Wisnowski said or that the board said could be heard by the people on Zoom. My iPhone was just lighting up, and you should know that everyone's got to speak directly into their microphones, please, in order for people not there to hear you. But I want to say that the 2004 Bridgehampton Hamlet Plan, which was commissioned by the then town board, said that it was a goal in 2004 for us to preserve our historic buildings, and here we are in 2022. Also, as you enter the hamlet, there's a sign that says Historic Bridgehampton, 1656 settled. And yet, what are we doing? We so far have done nothing to preserve this historic aspect of our hamlet, and we're still hearing a lot of talk. I know Ed is trying really hard, but it's very discouraging for me to hear that more research has to be done by Julie Green, not only on the Main Street buildings themselves, but also on the back roads, because in 2009, Ann Sanford, an historian who lives in Sagaponic, did such a report. I can't imagine there's anything that Julie will uncover that Ann did not. And Ed, I'm sorry, but you've never been able to tell me exactly what Julie will be looking for that Ann hasn't already provided. So from my point of view, this is tax dollars perhaps wasted and time wasted while more studies are being done, whereas this information has already been provided. In other words, identifying the homes and the buildings, including those on Main Street and the back roads, plus why they would be historic. In other words, well-known people live there, people important to the community, important architecture, et cetera, et cetera. That has already been provided, and this is the 2009 addendum to the Hamlet Plan. Why is more research needed? And I agree with everyone on the board that if we wait, there'll be more houses torn down. I don't understand why we need more research. This seems to me to be, it could be perceived, let me put it that way, as a delaying tactic. I don't see why more we have already identified the important buildings, and God knows how many of them are still left. I think this needs to be moved ahead, and I don't see how more research needs to be done that hasn't been done already, and I've never been given that information, nor has anybody on the Bridgehampton Civic. And I just have to say that. I also want to say something else. I think we need a public relations campaign to the community to get the community on board with this. Several people have told me, people who just joined the Civic, we're now up to 92 members in really only a few weeks. And people who own some of the homes we're talking about are a little afraid. They say, well, will I not be able to paint my shutters black if I want to? We need to tell people what they can do to their homes, even if their homes were landmarked. People are also unsure, what is the difference between an historic district and a landmark building? Lots of people don't know that. Even I don't know the answer. We need a public relations campaign to get the community on board with this, and so that people will feel comfortable that even if their homes are in a landmark district, or if they're landmarked themselves, they can still do a great deal. For instance, lots of people don't know that they can gut their homes, that it's really only the exterior of the home that needs to be preserved. And even then, there are homes that have been given a lot of leeway with that. They can make additions to the home. Can they paint their, shutters different colors? We need to get the community involved. And you might say, well, some of this information is on the website. But lots of people aren't going to go onto the town website and research it themselves. We need a campaign to get everybody on board with this. And I also have to say, I had a phone call very recently from one of our directors, and I wanted to know, well, why do I want to expand the district from the commercial buildings on Main Street to the back roads where the residences are, or even further along Montauk Highway East, where there are quite a few significant buildings? The answer is, nobody has ever come to me at least and said, oh, gee, I'd love you to preserve that Realtor building on Main Street or that restaurant building. No, they come to us and say, we are horrified that these historic residences on the back roads are getting torn down. Lumber Lane, Ocean Road, Falls Lane. These are the things on Montauk Highway, all the houses that were torn down to make way for Saunders and Farrell office buildings. These are the things that people are upset about. And I think it's good to preserve the height and the look of some of the commercial buildings, but that's not the emotional tug on the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. I understand your passion. Long known that you have been an advocate for getting things moving, and we understand the elements of your comments. I agree myself, living on one of those back roads in Hamlet, in an old house, that there are a lot of them around Bridgehampton as well, and that they are as well in danger, certainly. And given the comments from my colleague board members here tonight, that they're inclined to see an expanded protection district added to the village district later on as a path. I think.
Why later on, Ed? What are we waiting for? What information are you going to learn that you don't already know now from Ann Stanford's 2009 report?
Well, the 2009 report basically was concentrated on the village Main Street structures. There were other structures
No, it wasn't,
involved.
Ed. No, it wasn't. It included many of the homes on back roads.
The AKRF report has many more than the 2009 report has. It's much more comprehensive. And some of the descriptions in the 2009 report would need to be enhanced in terms of making the distinctions for what would be a contributing resource and a non-contributing resource for a historic district. There are certain criteria that have to be attached for a contributing resource in a historic district. And those things just have to be kind of specified along the way.
Yes, and I think what has to be specified is exactly what is not included. What are the additional pieces of information do you need? And I think that we would like to know that, to be specific about what is the information that is missing. The other thing I think some of the members wanted to know, I know the last time, a couple of months ago, I guess it was the only time I attended this meeting, that was when we were trying to pair with New York State. And I don't think we've heard anything about where that stands.
Your question was about what for New York State?
What was it? To be pairing with New York State, to get resources from New York State to do this, to be eligible for their program, and I think that this board passed that, the desire to do it, but we haven't heard anything since then.
Right,
I forget what it was called.
yeah, I think you're talking about the application for certified local government status.
Yeah, that's it, Ed. That's
And,
it.
yes, and we'll be discussing that later tonight, and as the steps we're taking. And we basically had a Zoom meeting today about it to compile all the material needed to forward to New York State, so it's in progress. Government can grind exceedingly slowly sometimes, or maybe all the time, but it is in progress. So that is something we hope to see accomplished.
Pamela, I would say we're well on our way, so we should have good news for you relatively quickly. All right?
And I do appreciate your speaking into the mic. I heard you perfectly. And everyone-
Hallelujah.
It was great. Because there are about 10 more people on our membership that are on this call or tried to get onto the call, and none of them could hear any of the preamble. So we really appreciate your speaking directly into the mic for those who are listening to this remotely. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Pam. We finally got the internet connection.
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay. I think we have isn't there one more person?
Do we have another?
We have two more.
Okay. Good evening.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes.
We can hear.
Okay, so my name is Meredith Berkowitz. I'm also a director of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I have rented and owned in Bridgehampton for over 16 years. I'm sort of new to the historic preservation process, but I want to sort of echo and share my experience, the limited experience that I do have, which is it's an age-old debate that balances, the preservation and the character of our hamlet against, development and owners that want to have flexibility to do what they want. And to what Pamela said about a PR campaign, I think that's really important, because I think besides getting through all of these panels, the biggest obstacle is garnering support from the community. And I think it's a really important point to make, that the owners aren't necessarily going to lose their flexibility. And I think it's really important to get that messaging out, especially with, as the neighborhoods and the hamlet starts to turn over, you have younger and younger families who, in the information age, they expect the information to come easily to them. And I don't think that they're gonna go out and seek it. And I think it's really important that as a community, we come together to make sure that there is this balancing between preserving the historic value and also the character of the hamlet and the village, and balancing that against, flexibility and development. And I think there are some significant benefits to living in historic districts, and I think that's also why it needs to extend, as others have said, well beyond the Main Street business districts, because it's not just about the Main Street and the little, and all the little businesses and the buildings that we have there, but all the historic houses and their history that exists throughout the hamlet. And I think it's really important to make sure that we are thinking beyond. And as others have said, time is of the essence, because the longer we wait, and if we don't do the whole area together and we limit it to just the business district, my fear is that it will go on for years before you start to include the homes that extend beyond Main Street. And in that period, and while we're delaying and we're debating it, we're going to lose those homes. The development rate out near me, I'm off Butter Lane, is astronomical. House after house goes down. And I think that, if we really are committed to preservation and to maintaining the history and of this village, then I think we have to move quickly for the whole thing, not just for Main Street. And I think in doing so, we'll build a stronger sense of community and frankly, increase property values in the area. And I think that that's just something that we have to get out in the messaging and garner community support for. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I think the board appreciates them very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. And is there anyone else on Zoom?
Yes, there is.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience?
There is one more.
There's one more on Zoom.
Oh, one more, okay.
Can't hear him.
Hi, am I up here?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry I look so strange on that image. I don't know why it looks like that. I'm someone who's been trying to join this meeting for about an hour. I'm sure I'm not alone. For some reason, the link was not connecting to anything.
Name and hamlet, please.
What's that?
Your name and the hamlet.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. My name is Gasper Tringali. And I live in Corwith Avenue. We've owned a house here for 30 years. My image just changed, so I don't know if you can still see me. Can you still see and hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. So it doesn't matter if I can see. So I missed all of what you've done, so I won't try to drag you back or repeat all the obvious stuff. Suffice it to say, everybody sitting there knows that the village, it has been under threat for all kinds of development. Just to cite a couple of conspicuous recent examples, the CVS that they wanted to put in at the end of, at the turn where the Bridgehampton Turnpike comes in, that would have been a nightmare. Fortunately, that didn't happen. And on the other end of the road, it was the Equinox gym, the one giant gym proposal that was sort of fended off, I think. And you can see how willing people like Farrell are to turn the entire village into an office park. We are lucky that it hasn't already been damaged beyond what's happened. And again, I think you all know this just as well as I do. I think we should take advantage of the luck that we've had, that the village is as intact as it is, and prevent any other eruptions like that from happening. And as far as protection goes and restriction, you know, there's a way in which to do it that makes it flexible enough for people to live with it. The jeopardy that the whole area is under from overdevelopment, I mean, the idea that they're gonna put a mall in Wainscott, which I'm sure you all know more about than me, is inconceivable to me that that's even, you know, being considered. I don't know what the status of it is. But as a longtime resident who's seen a lot of things come and go, as for example, the proposal to put 10 houses on the field behind the Historical Society some years ago. You know, these development threats are constant. And unless we want to live in a paved over, commercial mall, suburban mall-like environment, where the big features are parking and shopping, we better get off our asses and do something about it. And you people, we need you people, it's not a person like me to call and complain. It's for people like you who are really much more informed about this whole subject to take a leadership role so that we're not having to goad you and prod you and beg you to do something. But that you are gonna come to us and say, this is what we're gonna do. Protect our village, protect our hamlet, and keep it from becoming an overdeveloped suburban, you know, banality. And again, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. And I know there are commercial interests always at play. I think they are well mollified by other things that have happened and will happen. And we don't have to sacrifice the village in order to, you know, feed that beast. So I'll leave it there. And again, you know, I don't know the history as well as Pam. I don't know the studies as well as you do. But I think we all understand the day-to-day imminent threat that we're living with. And, you know, those examples, those three examples I cited, Equinox, CVS, and the development of the field, you know, are just three. I'm sure you're familiar with others. So help us out, protect the village, and don't allow really business interests that are not even from here. We're talking about companies that come from Arizona, Denmark, as I understand it. You know, these are people who are purely speculating on the real estate development of the area. They don't live here. They could care less. They're just trying to turn a dollar. And again, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. So rather than, you know, have a hearing and listen to little pipsqueaks like me make our complaints, take a leading role, and you tell us how we're gonna protect our village, how we're gonna protect our hamlet, how we're gonna protect this area in a way that, you know, works for all of us. All right, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, and we'll take it seriously, and we'll work to try and produce a result in a fairly short framework of time. Not sure what that framework will be, but we'll be working on it.
We have two more people.
Okay, two more people. Just as a reminder to those joining by Zoom, to identify yourself and the hamlet of residence, and be aware that the meeting is being recorded. Good evening.
Am I supposed to speak?
It's your turn.
Yes.
I'm Nancy Walter Vertes. I'm Vice President of the Bridgehampton Civic Association. I live in Bridgehampton. I've lived here for 30 years. May I continue?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
please do.
I don't know exactly where this fits in your agenda, but I would like to discuss the John Sanford House, which dates from 1745, which is on the corner of Ocean Road and Paul's Lane. I live 2 or 3 houses removed from that house, which was torn down about a month ago. I would hope that designation as a historic district would prevent houses of this nature from being demolished. I understand that there was a deal made, Ed can fill you in on the details with the builder, that he would actually save this house historically and build it again on property that he owned in Southampton. I would just like to make sure that this deal follows the rules. It was taken down very quickly. I didn't see anybody taking photographs. I didn't see anyone using a notebook. And it looked to me as though it was just all thrown into the various bins on the property. So I would like to suggest that if this house is in fact rebuilt somewhere in Southampton, it should be by the letter of the law. We should look at the logbooks, the photographs. There must have been a supervising architect. I don't know exactly what the rules are, but I would hope that houses could not be destroyed without due process, and that we can follow up and make sure that this house was in fact not destroyed without due process. I don't know how many other houses of this age exist in Bridgehampton, and I know you were referring earlier to Ann Sanford's excellent inventory in 2009. Ann Sanford has told me that she thinks there might be 3 or 4 salt boxes left in Bridgehampton. They are in fact on those outer streets, not on Main Street. They are in the streets that we are trying to include within the historic district. So we've lost 1 of the 4. Let's hope that the 3 or 4 others can be saved in the process. And I would just second everything Pamela Harwood said about time is of the essence. And I don't know to what extent we want to wait for more studies. At this point, I think we know what the houses are that are in danger. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. The fate of the house that was at Paul's Lane and Ocean Road, I believe it was dismantled and put in some kind of storage, and I do not know what the plans are by the owner of the remnants of that house. So we'll just have to wait and see. At the moment, we don't really have much control over what happens with that.
Okay?
No.
Just keep an eye on it then, please.
Okay. Somebody is aware that is watching it, but is not expressing an optimistic view. You cannot see him in the room here, but as a member of the staff of the town government. Okay, if we have someone else waiting.
That's it.
Can I ask a question?
No one else on Zoom.
Okay,
Okay, we have somebody here.
Hi, my name is Nina Deck. I'm the Executive Director of the Bridgehampton Historical Society and Museum. Hello, everybody. Some of you I know and met. Hi, Ed.
Good evening.
I had a quick question. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. You had mentioned that there were several areas that make up the district, is it in Bridgehampton, of historic of the entire historic area can be broken down into 5 different areas.
I was in the village of Southampton.
Village of Southampton. Is there nothing similar?
Sag Harbor also, there's several.
Is there nothing similar in Bridgehampton? Or can there be something similar in Bridgehampton? Because what I'm thinking is, if the project is so overwhelming, right, if you start, as you were saying, or what someone was saying, I'm sorry, I don't know everybody's name, to start with an area where you're almost fully 100% populated in terms of information and get that going. And then that will then open the door for you to continue the process with other areas instead of waiting for the entire thing to happen. And I also agree about a PR plan because New York State, a quick search on my behalf, New York State has a historic tax credit for commercial and non-commercial properties. So as you all are aware, of course, and there's certain restrictions with regard to that, but areas have to be deemed historic, I think, in order to receive that tax credit. So there's an easier process, a smaller step process to get there if the area is deemed, and then you move forward with some sort of a PR campaign that lets people know that, in fact, historic preservation is something that can save them money or bring them money or increase the value of their home. I think that those are the messages that need to get out, because I think the prevailing thought is that if a home is preserved, one cannot change it or sell it or its value is diminished, when in fact, I think what you're all talking about is that there's a great possibility that that value is increased when the community is preserved. And I think a good example of this particular type of restoration of an historic home is in the village of Sag Harbor on Glover Street, right past Canio's. If you make a left and you go down that little road where it's on the water there, there's a rather large home that has retained its edifice. Very much exactly as Julie Green's recommendation was when she made that presentation to the town, to us, to I think all of you, about historic preservation. They kept the edifice. The house that they're building behind it is enormous, but one can't see it from the street. All really one sees is the front of that house, and the entire sort of feel and look of that lane of Glover Street, Glover Lane, is preserved. So I think there's a message issue that, as others had said, that is the missing component. And these things can happen together. And then folks like me and others, you know, I can have a walking tour, I can have a small exhibition, I can have a meeting of all sorts of different people. I can celebrate, I can have a celebration of historic homes in a one-day workshop. There are lots of ideas that we can sort of help you and support you. And we're here, and I think it's really important to know that you're not alone, and you're not doing this by yourself. You know, we're all with you, because I should just say, my name's Nina Deck, but I've lived in Southampton for 38 years. So I chose this as my home as a young woman, and I've lived in other places, but I've always returned. And I've been a homeowner and I've been a renter, so I've lived on both sides. But I really just want you to know that we're all in it together. And super grateful that you're here and that you're passionate about it. And we want to help, and we want it to move faster, because for all of you, and you want it to move faster, obviously. So utilize us. Call on us, you know, let us help you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nina.
And I guess we have exhausted the number of people wishing to comment tonight. We've heard the opinions being expressed. My sense was that prior to the public presentation, the board was moving towards the idea of working first to accomplish a Main Street business district first, with subsequent residential protections to be a second phase or second stage. Is that still anybody's mind get changed?
And to do some in between that.
You have to speak
Okay.
into
You can-
And in between that, so put in the business, we have some kind of public interest education. so people understand that they're still allowed to do things with the house and the businesses are still allowed to develop and grow. And then as we move on to the residential, to the small houses behind Main Street.
Right, well, but the first step is,
Oh, I
Do you
beg your
agree with
pardon.
yeah,
Yes,
Do you agree with
I
the first
agree.
step?
okay. All right.
Yes, I also agree.
I also think we should do some research on the second stage. I also just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that I actually recently joined this board, and I am a co-founder of Save Sag Harbor. I founded that organization 15 years ago, and I also was very involved with getting the historic district settled in Sag Harbor. So I'm very interested in taking this as a personal mission on this board to get clarity of what we have to do and help this get done as fast as possible. I know Bonnie and some of your other people that spoke, and I'd be very interested in following up meeting and sharing with you some of the best practices from Sag Harbor. Totally agree that we need some urgency on this and to move ahead with the first stage, but I also would like to do research of how to do the second. We also did the historical preservation in Sag Harbor with a lot of volunteers, so I do believe that it's possible for us to train people to really expedite this. And I'll take this as a personal project here.
Excuse me, your name?
Barbara Roberts.
Okay, well, I think the consensus is established for the path to follow, and we'll seek to make some progress on it by the next meeting to be able to report to the public on this matter as well. With that, I think we can move on to our regular business of the items concerning various applications for in this case, first one would be an application for demolition of.
Thank you.
Thank you all, right. 16 Old Country Road in Watermill. And earlier today, Susan circulated a report which you can please proceed.
Did you want to preface it that about not, we haven't received the application officially yet because of the upload before we, just
Okay, the background to this report is that this is a property being purchased by the Community Preservation Fund. It's premised upon, the contract is premised upon the demolition of the building prior to the closing of the acquisition. And the owners live in New Jersey, have been, for the most part, absent from the area for a substantial number of years. So they employed an agent to proceed with the paperwork, so to speak, for getting the demolition permit to execute on the contract with the Community Preservation Fund. And as some of us, maybe all of us know, the filing of applications online doesn't always work well. And that was one aspect of this particular application. And in the process of the problems with the application, not having photographs, not knowing photographs were required, and some other details, Susan and I undertook an expedition out to the property to do the investigation and help it along, rather than see it get hung up in our process. here. There are other obvious processes to take place as well. And Susan graciously took up the burden of doing the written history, and her photographs were much better than mine.
Really?
So I will turn it over to Susan to give the brief summary of what the story of this house is.
And it's a combined history. Ed sent me his research. I had started to research it prior to the site visit, just to get a general idea of some of the names and the families involved, and with the maps. But we hadn't received the application, so I hadn't continued. So it's combined research. I wrote it up, and this is what we have. But based on what we saw in the condition of the house, I didn't have a concern that way. I mean, because it's in very deteriorated condition. And even in our brief research, we hadn't found historical significance or architectural significance. So based on that, I was willing to write this up. So anyways, these were the pictures of the house. Looking at that west facade in the south, you can actually get a photograph. That was sort of, you work around, that was what you see. The first one is you approach the house, the other to the right. Now what happens is you really can't even photograph the east facade because there's a deck there, and after the deck there's a drop off. It just goes totally down, so you can't back up past the deck. So that was actually, taken, that was taken, more from the side. And then you can see, of course, the north facade. And even there's a drop off. So even though the town says it's 0.5 acres for this, I would say, it's much less than that. That's really inhabitable. You have the house and just a small yard around it. There is a space because there were two roads that have been since abandoned that it does appear like there's a little bit more space. So these were the pictures of the house, and you can see there's some old shingles, old windows. Everything is pretty much, the door appears to be new with a little half shell looking there. But everything, you had to walk around it quite carefully on the deck and walking around it. We really did want to see the interior, and they had cautioned us about going into the house. And when you open the door, I was able to take the two pictures on the left, but you really couldn't get into the house. And the other two were taken in 2021 and provided by the agent, and they said the homeowners had taken those. The reason I included that third one is reportedly the husband of the current owner said that he had heard that there had been a salt box top height in the back. You can actually see with that staircase, that probably was where that original staircase, it was the northern portion. And if you look back at those pictures, Ed could see the salt box more so than I did. There's a little shed extension in it, and there was a brick foundation on the rear. So I do believe that was, and I'm going to add it to my notes. I said that the person who bought the property in 1893 probably built the house, but he may very well have moved that salt box because that was very common in the Watermill area. They moved. The Benedict family, Bennett, frequently moved houses. But so that's what you're seeing is exactly, not exactly, but what we saw were basically the exterior and a couple glimpses into the interior. Based on that, you see the deteriorated condition. When it comes to the the background and the history, the town tax assessor said that it was built in 1920, but it more likely was built in the late 1890s because it was purchased by Freedom Dearth. He was a day laborer, had actually moved here from Vermont, and he purchased it from Nancy M. Goodale in 1893. Ed found those, have the actual deeds. It was .39 acres when he purchased it. And I assume it's pretty much the same plot. It's the little triangle that was created between the abandoned roads and the railroad track. But it may have been just measured slightly differently. However, most of it beside that front little portion really sloped down. We didn't even, I didn't venture down that. But Mrs. Goodale owned, over there to the left, owned, it was at that time a hotel and a boarding house, and it later became the Seven Ponds Inn, and I included one of Eric's postcards, Eric Woodward's collection there. But that was where she was a person who owned the property, and that boarding house is not extant in the whole Seven Ponds Inn, burnt in the late 70s. I guess it's one of the larger fires in Southampton that I guess it lives in history at the local fire department, unfortunately. But I'm going back to the house. There's no significance actually with Nancy except good deal that she owned the property. But Freedom likely had the house moved there or built the house. And it does not appear on the map until that 1902 map. Prior to that, I included the maps from 1858, 1873, and 1894. And each time I included a circle that shows nothing in that little triangular area. And also Ed pointed out that Freedom died in 1908. So that I'll add that information to this. I knew it should be in there, but I couldn't find it. But he was a mill hand after Vermont. He went to Windham, Connecticut, then came locally. He worked at the Bishop's lumber yard, according to Ed's research, and eventually ended up in St. Petersburg, Florida, as a quite accomplished gardener. So that must have happened someplace in between that. And he died not much longer after that. But around 1908, he sold the property to James E. Jennings, which was the father and a real estate agent. He was the Jennings from North Sea. I'd also talked about them, 761 Flying Point. That was James Jennings' house. And eventually he moved up and he lived on Montauk Highway at Loch Leah. And his son purchased the Corwith General Store, which later had the post office. Now, the homeowner's husband, and they lived in fairly architecturally significant homes, and so it's my guess that he purchased this home speculatively or as a rental, and then later on sold it. My guess is they may have been the ones that added that front gable portion to the current house, but didn't live there at all. But after they sold it to the Mike White, who was said to be from Lithuania, Poland, or Russia, depending on which census you read. The birth dates sometimes even changed, but he immigrated around 1907 to the area. And first of all, living with his brother Alex and that family on Seven Ponds Road. He eventually married Estella, and they had 4 children. Later on, Michael Sr. was a farm laborer and watermill, and by 1925, he lived on Seven Ponds Road, and they had another son. Sometime the family reports that these are the descendants of Michael White, still own the property, that he purchased it around 1925. My guess is 1925 to 1930. By 1930, he owned the property, and it remained in the family. There seemed to be some discord at some point. I think Mike might have been living in that house by himself. I think by 1930, it was just he, Stella, and 1 child. And then the house was valued at $3,000, and they owned the home. And after that, he may have been there by himself. So I included the maps from 1930. It looked like there was a lot more going on at one time. I see a number of buildings that if he farmed, there must have been some farm. I'm not sure how he farmed that sloping land, and it does go down to the wetlands, which is, I guess, important to note at Mill Pond, as it's being, possibly being included for purchase with the park. But, and I included the map from around 1960, when the Mike White's 1941 will left the property specifically only to his daughter Lillian. And so it's Lillian and Lillian's children eventually inherited the property where it remains today. So is there anything else that you can think? And thank you for sending what you did, Ed. But Ed and I, based on the condition of the house and the lack of significance, and I also have to remove the one criteria, because we're not using the National Register criteria. It's just, I'll delete that it wouldn't meet the 4 criteria for the code.
Yeah, the house had several holes in the roof for several years, so the rain and water penetration was not only evident, the ceilings were coming down. It's derelict.
Well, I thought they had a light on in the house. I said, oh, there's a light on up there, and it was actually the light
Coming through
in
the
the
roof.
second story that you could see.
Yeah.
And the electric company was arriving as we left, I think,
To remove power from the
remove
house.
the power
so,
from the house, so.
And they already had a contract for demolition, waiting for paperwork to be filed.
But I think from what the homeowner Lorraine had said, that her mother Lillian had lived there for a number of years. Lorraine or Lori worked close by and visited her, and her mother seemed to really enjoy the house. There was no heat. It was heated by the potbelly stove. That's the only sort. There was never central heating or a furnace in the house. So at some point after the mother passed away, it just nobody really came out very often, or I guess I'm making that assumption.
Right.
It was rarely visited, and Lorraine
mother
moved to New Jersey
Yeah,
with
the
her
mother
new
became
husband.
basically disabled and could not live in the house alone any longer. And then the house was just simply left.
So that's pretty much
So
the story. So.
in any case, there's no objection that
Yeah,
you could
no
find
objection.
at all.
The only thing that I found, and it's not sad, but it's telling that the agent was there, mentioned that a doctor, a dentist, somebody from out of state had been interested in the property for a number of years, but was not willing, or whatever the amount of money that the family wanted for it, that's not what he had wanted to pay. So after a number of years of those negotiations, it was sold to CPF, who obviously must be paying more than a buyer who would have been willing to restore it or keep it in some form. At least that was my understanding. He was going to use it in some fashion and restore it, but that didn't work. And I find that telling and unfortunate, but a reality.
Yeah. So if there's no problem with it, we'll send
But we're not.
no objection.
Okay, do we wait for the application?
We wait for all the paperwork. But
Okay, I'll take care of it whenever it comes
Okay,
in.
well, and just keep it in mind that you have to remind me to be checking as to when the paperwork comes in.
I will check for it, and I will read my report and get the rest of those typos out of there. So.
Okay.
Thank you for what you sent.
Okay, 602 Montauk Highway.
Okay, this is a property in East Quogue, on the main street of East Quogue, down toward the west end of the hamlet. It is identified as a historic resource in the AKRF report. It's identified as EQ 18. There are, as shown in the report I sent around, multiple historic resources in the immediate vicinity. What's proposed for this building, which was likely constructed about 1910, are some additions to the back of the structure. A little bit about the history before we get to that. It appears to have been constructed by an Elbert Aldrich at about the time of his marriage to Emily Oakes Carter. And both the Aldrich and the Carter names are very well known in the East Quogue community through the boat building businesses, which are at the other end of the hamlet. I could not find a connection between these two particular Carter and Aldrich people and the rest of the Carters and Aldriches, but there must be something somewhere there. Did quite a bit of searching in the surname database, but could not unearth it. One of the interesting quirks of this family is that Emily Oakes Carter had previously married Elbert's younger brother, Arthur Robert Aldrich, in 1895, and they had 2 children. And at the time, just before his son, the second child, was born, he died, and Emily, the wife, eventually married the brother. So it was all Aldriches and Carters in this house. The son, Arthur, remained in East Quogue until his passing in 1968 and may have lived in this house, but I'm not certain of that at all. All of the family members mentioned in this report are buried up in the Oakwood Cemetery in East Quogue. So it is proposed to make a 1 to 2 story addition to the, it would be the northwest corner of the building, which is essentially the back corner of the building. The building sits at the intersection of Lewis Road and Montauk Highway, so 2 facades of the building are supposedly visible from the street. This is the facade that faces Montauk Highway, and this is relatively visible from the street. There are no changes proposed for this facade at all. There have been a number of prior changes to the structure. The siding there is aluminum. The windows are now all 1/1 with a very, including the attic windows on this particular facade. They are non-original windows. But that wraparound porch is likely an original feature. There are decorative elements at the top of the posts. The posts look to be older posts. So I think basically the form of this structure and its general appearance are historic. And as you can see in the elevation I've put below there are no changes proposed for this facade. Could you flip to the next page, Ed, please? Okay, this is the back side. This is the side that faces away from Montauk Highway. This side is not visible from either Montauk Highway or Lewis Road. And if you could move it up a little bit so you could see what's proposed here, it's proposed to put another one of these wraparound porches on the back, partially porch and partially enclosed. There is a rather unfortunate metal chimney stack going up the left-hand side there of the building at this point in time. They propose to enclose that with a chimney that looks like it's going to be one of those sort of faux stone things. And then there is an addition proposed to the right-hand side there. It's a 1 and 2 story addition, which will engulf that. There's a little enclosed porch there now. The porch appears to have been original because if you look in the back door there, you can see some batten doors and original, what appears to be original hardware. But the porch enclosure itself appears to be a later addition to the structure. There's also some strange things over on the left-hand side. There's an outdoor shower. There's a window that's covered with a louvered thing. And this addition will all basically change a lot of those odd elements. So could you go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is the facade that it would be visible from Lewis Road if there weren't a massive hedge and fence along the road. The only way you can glimpse it is through either end of the curved driveway. The addition that I was just mentioning will be put on what is the left-hand side of the building here. Again, it will face away from Montauk Highway. It will not be visible from Montauk Highway. It would be visible to some extent if you looked in the 2 openings, the 2 driveway openings here. And you can see how the little porch will be lost, and basically the upstairs will be extended a bit and the porch added on the back. And there's one more slide, I think, with pictures. Okay, this is the facade that faces away from Lewis. This is kind of partially visible from Main Street, but not much, and the addition will be on the back side, kind of behind that bay window that sticks out. And again, this will be a porch partially enclosed. It'll be an enclosure around that metal chimney stack thing. The outside is proposed to be finished in kind with the existing materials, although it's interesting, the existing materials are aluminum, and it's a cement-type siding that's proposed for the addition. So hopefully it will look similar to the existing aluminum. 1/1 windows to match the, the existing windows on the house. The only two windows I saw that appeared to me to be original are the little attic window that you can see on the gable end there. There's a matching one on the gable end on the other side. All the other windows appear to be non-original. I have no objection to the proposed additions here because I think they're mostly not going to be particularly visible from the two public streets, and they appear to be in keeping with the general appearance of the building. Any questions?
The proposed siding is probably better for insulation than the aluminum.
Yeah, it's the siding is in good shape. I had to go up and look closely at it, but the report that was done, the East Quogue Heritage Area report, does note that it is aluminum siding. So that hasn't changed since that report was done. So I'll be happy to make the response if nobody has any.
Okay, is there any other comments
Any
that
other comments?
anyone has? And very well presented.
Okay.
Okay. And 104 South Country.
Okay, so we reviewed this in 2016, when the owners proposed to convert the attached three-car garage into living space. They did proceed with that project. We had no objection to it, but we made a recommendation that instead of the hardy panel siding with an applied AZEK panel and frame with a sort of a cross buck in the bottom, we had recommended that they continue with the cedar shingles like the original house. They did proceed with the hardy panel siding. The proposed construction consists of modifying the center hall colonial revival style home by altering a small roof line on the rear of the existing dwelling and adding two new screen porches, one on the front of the house and one on the rear. They also plan to construct a new two-car detached garage towards the rear of the property. The property contains the two-story house. It has two covered porches. There's a swimming pool, a small basketball court, a tennis court, two sheds, and a decorative well. The driveway passes the house on the east end and then circles around the back, encircling a large tree. The basketball court will be removed and the driveway will be modified slightly to accommodate the new detached garage. The large tree in the back is a camper-down elm, thought by the previous owners to be the largest tree of its kind on Long Island. When you look at the photo that I have in the report, it almost looks like a Photoshop in that the tree is so large compared to the house. Yeah, it would be on page 9, so it'd be back a couple of pages. Well, yeah, you could see it on that one as well.
Page 10?
No, 9.
9?
So, that.
Whoa,
Wow.
yes.
When you see that tree, you feel it's either very close to the photographer or the house is very far behind.
Wow.
But really, there's barely the driveway between the two.
Wow.
The tree is tremendous. It's
Wow.
still there, and they do plan to keep that tree.
Wow.
They all came from a
preserve those
single
trees.
tree in Scotland. The groundskeeper for the Earl of Camperdown developed this tree, and then every tree since has been a cutting developed from that original tree.
Fantastic.
The 1873 Beers map shows,
When is that picture dated from?
there is no date on that photo, but one of the later photos shows the tree more from, this is from the north. It does show it again from the,
Well, this is
Yeah,
the
you
the
can-
tree
That's the
right
tree.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yes.
it's, there may be
It's incredible.
a different,
yeah, so it's assumed that that tree was
Picture, but-
planted in 1941 when the house was constructed and is still there. The 1873 Beers map shows no buildings on the property. The 1916 Belcher and Hyde map shows no buildings on the subject property. Although the subject maps do not show any structures on the property, a deteriorated house and several outbuildings were present in the late 1930s prior to the construction of the present
that's
home,
back here.
as shown in several historic photographs found in the book, A History of Remsenburg. The address is listed in the Southampton Historic Resources Survey, the AKRF, RSHD 28, and is located within the potential Remsenburg-Spionk Historic District. It's also listed in the historic profiles of Eastport, Spionk, Remsenburg, and West Hampton, noted as the J.J. Haggerty House, which was known as Wits End. So I guess when you got to your wits' end, you came out here for a retreat. This grand house was designed in 1939 by well-known American architect Amor Embury II and built by Joseph C. Happ Fitzpatrick of East Moriches at a cost of $22,800 and was completed in 1941. The Haggerty estate at one time included 63 acres. The town mass appraisal information shows the AYB is 1940. J.J. Haggerty was at one time part owner of the New York Giants baseball team. He was a road builder who worked closely with Robert Moses to build New York City's major parkways. Amor Embury was working also with Robert Moses at the same time on construction and renovation of the New York City parks and was responsible for overseeing almost 600 of the different civil jobs that were done in New York. The property is potentially landmark eligible under town criteria A and C, and if we throw Amor Embury in there as well, we could possibly see it as D, as he is a noted architect. Wits End was purchased by Robert Luxembourg in 1980 from the original owner's estate. He sold Wits End in 1981 to New York Knicks Hall of Famer Dave DeBuscher. The modifications to the dwelling are in keeping with the design of the remainder of the house, but are still recognizable as modifications to the original design. I recommended that the Landmarks Board not object to the application, as the proposed projects will not be readily visible from South Country or if this is on a corner, or on Bridle Path, as they are well shielded from view by dense hedges on actually all four sides of the property. Only a brief glimpse of the house can be had by looking up the driveway entry. We should, however, recommend that the roofing on the proposed screen porches be considered as red cedar shingles instead of the standing seam metal roofing, which is proposed and does not appear anywhere else on the existing dwelling. There may be some problems with doing the shingles on the roof, as the drawings that were presented, the roof pitch is fairly shallow. So perhaps the roof could be pitched at a greater pitch so that the cedar shingles could be put on there. Being that the one porch is on the front, that would be the important one. Not so important the roof line modification in the back or the screen porch on the back, as they wouldn't be seen from the street. There, if they really wanted to do the standing seam, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Roof doesn't look too shallow from roof pitch on this.
Right under the little tag there, which is probably the house number.
Yeah, it's the,
Apartments shown.
let me see if I can get the.
Okay, no, it would be at the opposite end. Okay, it would be at the far end of the house. Yeah, there's almost like a breezeway connector to an
Uh-huh.
addition that was done on the far end, the upper end of the house at that
Mhm.
point. But they brought the two porches into that roof as shed roofs, so they could create a higher pitch over that roof and therefore go with the wood shingles. Yeah, as you see there, yep, to the left of that main sort of two-story mass in the center, yes, right there with the little white face on it. That portion is a very narrow portion in depth front to back, and when you add the screen porch on in the front and the one in the back and use sort of a lower than that ridge height, you do end up with a very shallow pitch. But perhaps they could do something to increase that and be able to use the wood shingles.
Looks like they were trying not to
Oh.
block the windows that were up there.
It could be, yep, that they were trying not to block the windows in the second floor of that
Yeah.
larger mass.
So, okay, I sense that there's no concern here from the board members, so would you make a recommendation then in a response to,
Yes.
about the roof material?
Mhm.
No?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you able to also recommend the protection of the tree, or is that not within your purview because it's the house and everything?
We have commented about trees and things before.
Was the tree a matter of in danger?
It shouldn't be. It's to the side of where the addition is being done. It should be far enough away. I would have thought that the driveway was probably the greatest danger that ever happened to it, encircling it that way. But it seems to have survived it without any trouble, so. But
About the future, if there's something that you're recommending now, so that
Mhm.
if in the future a change wants to be made, then if this board has spoken,
Yeah.
about the meaning of trees.
No.
But not, I just curious about that.
okay.
I
We
think
can
I'd
add
say
something
just
to it.
Certainly, if they're gonna have construction vehicles back
We
there, they don't
need
need
to
Okay.
identify our
Should be
heritage
lawn area
trees.
around the
That's
tree.
another one of my
True.
I've got
projects.
that going on now, and, yeah, it's,
Mhm.
So,
I'll add that to it.
we have finished with that. And we have 121 Halsey Lane. This is another application where there's just been some administrative problems or administrative process problems involved. This house was issued a building permit by the building department. And then
They started doing work,
the building department recalled the permit.
that's what they tell me.
And the reason was that it was not referred to the landmarks board, so construction was stopped. Was a stop work order issued?
No stop work order was issued, I'm not even sure if the work stopped.
Okay. All right. So the question was whether or not we could consider it on a basis tonight. I did send a report around for this property. Let me see if I can bring it up. Okay. This is the current picture of it. What has been done, or what is proposed, is to extend the gable portion of this area to the rear of the house out over this enclosed screen porch on the lower level in this area. This is an older picture that is from the road side of the house on Halsey Lane. This property abutted farmland for many years on Halsey Lane. There's been a lot of filling in, but this is preserved farmland that is remnants of the Topping farmland that was prominent here. And a widow, just after she became a widow, named Grace Strong, bought the property, 2 acres or so, from the farmer, Frank Topping. By the way, her husband, for a short period of time, was Frank Strong, a cousin. So she married, I don't know, the Strongs were numerous, and I don't know, what the cousin, 2nd, 4th, 5th, it's a long-standing name out here. Her husband had been a carpenter, and while building one of the famous mansions in Bridgehampton on Sagaponack Lake, Sag Pond, for John Wiley, the publishing company Wiley. He fell off the scaffolding and expired, and so she was left a widow. Previously, she and her husband had lived in Mecox, closer to Mecox Bay, which was south of there. She lived there she bought the property in 1908. She lived there until she sold the property in 1928 to a family by the name of Kozlik. John Kozlik was an electrical contractor, raised his family there. His son inherited the house. He was an electrical contractor in Bridgehampton for many years, and sold the property to a real estate agent local in Bridgehampton who held the property. He sold that in 2004, the Kozliks, and then the realty agent sold it more recently to the current owner. So in any case, the question was, the house has been remodeled in 2004. There were extensive renovations noted in the town's property records done on the house. So a lot of the original character of the house had been lost, as you can tell by the nature of those pictures of the house. Some of these details are not original to where's my report here? There, yeah. Some of these porches are obviously not original in character to the house. And the rear of the house, some section of this might also have been added in the back along the way. So without significant individuals and without kind of original character, I don't see that there's much to object, but open to your comments about it in any case. Did you take a peek out of it?
You couldn't take a peek at it, I tried to. Did you take?
I only have taken the peek at it by visual records.
No.
Yeah.
But it's been done.
Yeah.
So if it's been done, it's been done.
Yeah. Yeah, much of the work seems to have been executed already, so.
It was minor and not offensive.
Yeah. Actually getting rid of the,
In the second
yeah,
story
the porch,
fence,
deck,
then
the deck on the second floor
it's more
disappears,
offensive.
yeah, yeah. So if there's no other comment, I'll proceed to respond on it with no objection, and we'll be able to keep that off of the November agenda. And just to mention, with respect to the agenda, thank you, Stephanie, for everything you do with the agenda. It's so helpful, and it's so great for you to keep on the details about it, so.
You're welcome. It's good to keep on top of it. It seems to change regularly.
Maybe we'll put you in charge of the Bridgehampton Historic District project.
We have enough historic stuff going on in the west end of the town that's going on. And actually, while we're talking about that, there will be a meeting of the CAC West in early November, and Jackie Fenlon and Julie Green are going to be speaking at that meeting to the CAC West about the historic facade easement that's available through CPF. And then I will be speaking at the early December CAC West meeting about the landmarking process and the pluses and minuses and all of that, and the maintenance program. We've had an ongoing rumble of applications coming in from our area through word of mouth from people who have gone through it, and there seems to have aroused the interest of the CAC out there. So we're going to try to get some public education going that way.
Oh, good to hear.
So if anybody,
Public education as well.
yes, well, I think if the Jackie and Julie Roadshow could be, taken to other organizations so they could explain the CPF facade easement availability and nature, I think that would be helpful. Talk about putting a carrot, on the stick, at least for landmarking. I think that would be good.
Oh, good.
Good idea.
Okay, Nathaniel Rogers' certificate of appropriateness. I had been in communication with Matt Jedlicka, who says he hasn't made any progress on an application to finish the details. If you recall, a fence that has been erected and landscaping has been installed, that he provide information and documentation relative to it. It becomes something of a baseline for future reference for any activity that might come along. But he says, he indicated he will be working on it. Referrals. We don't have a,
We just got one, but I'm not sure.
right, that.
39 Bayview West,
I
Noyak.
went by there today.
You went by there, okay.
I read quickly through the thing, so when I got there, I wasn't sure what the hell they were doing.
Yeah,
It's two houses next to each other, and there's a sign that says there's a,
application made,
Right.
yes. Actually, to me, it's, I looked at it, and it's the attempt to make 3 house lots out of a current 2 by a common owner of the 2. And I can just, there's no historic.
No. This is a development from the 40s.
It was 39 Bay Avenue, right?
Yeah, 39 and 45.
Bayview? Is it Bayview?
Why is that? That's the
Bayview
wrong
Drive
one.
West.
It's Bayview, right?
Yeah.
Bayview.
Yeah, Bayview West.
Don't want to lose the view. No, that's not it.
Bayview West, Bayview
That's the
Drive
village of
West.
Sag Harbor. This is Noyak.
Yeah.
let me see, I think I might have already downloaded it for,
Bayview Drive
Yeah, it's Bayview Drive West.
West in Southampton.
In, well, it's Sag Harbor.
Southampton's right.
Yeah, that sounds-
Yeah, there's one in Sag, but one in Southampton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In,
Yeah, I have it right here.
Bayview Drive West.
Correct.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's located in an area where we've actually had some things take before. But I think it involves this property here, this larger one. And let me identify the parcels. This is 39,
Right,
and this is
45.
35. And
45
it
is,
wants to basically make a third building opportunity for those two parcels. None of these houses are historically significant that I could find with just a kind of casual look at it. And it's not a neighborhood of great historic character. It's basically a neighborhood that has risen up as summer cottages, seasonal cottages. Many of them have become remodeled in recent years to provide more year-round
Yes.
living amenities in them, but
most of
I
them,
didn't see
yes.
anything. So if there's no problem on this, I can send a memo to the planning that we've looked at it. We have no concern with anything associated with this subdivision that they are trying to accomplish. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. That takes care of another piece of business. And then, pending the 29 Dock Road, Remsenburg, there was a public hearing would have to be scheduled for it. I don't know if anything has been put in for public hearing.
I don't know. David, do you know what's happening with that?
I thought I saw a reso that Kelly did.
Well, it may be scheduled when we don't know about it, if it's,
Right.
I think she did, didn't she? You were working with her on that.
let's see. Well, we know it's got to go for public hearing. We'll check on whether or not
Right,
the trigger has been pulled to
right. We just.
get the town, yeah.
Yeah.
It has to-
Keep it going.
Right, it has to go to the planning board too as a referral,
Right.
right? And
The
so
weekend.
that
Yeah,
is
that's
something to accomplish.
Yeah, the owner's interested in getting landmarked this year, so that they would be
Could
eligible for the
qualify.
maintenance program
Right.
for this year's
Okay.
round. So I just want to make sure it didn't get lost in the process, and I think the owner would like to be present at the public hearing. I know I'd like to be present, so we just want to make sure it doesn't get lost.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure the reso went on already.
Okay.
okay, the demolition and construction list update, you did provide one not too long ago.
Yes, I sent that out on October 14th, and
Yes.
Stephanie just gave me her status updates. If you, they're just in progress. If you know something's been demolished, send me an email. Or Stephanie writes it on the list and gives it back to me, so thank you. I'll update those. I'm still working on the referrals, and it seemed like every time I started, it's just the other, just a list of the ones review, and every time I start, something happen, but I'm partial way through that. But one thing I do miss are the minutes for that, particularly like this 39 Bayview. I have it, but I'd always double check the minutes, just in case every now and again something comes in at the last minute. But that's life, so I'll do without those. That was always my double check backup. I didn't realize I had depended on those until,
No.
but I'm not gonna, I pretty much have as much as I need on those. So anyways, they're in progress. And, would you want me to go on to the next one quickly? I don't have much.
Quickly, yes.
Pretty much, I reviewed the planning board for 1013. There were repeats, no concerns. ZBA, same thing, except the one thing of interest, that was 10-6, October 6th and October 20th. And on October 20th one, there's one adjourned by the applicant to a different day, but it's going to be coming up. It's at the Port of Missing Men. They were at the ZBA looking to, wanting to put an addition on the laundry building. So I assume if and when that, we don't get referrals from the CBA, but if and when they go to do that, we should be getting a construction application, which I don't think we ever had one from that particular historic resource before. Anyways, that's on that one.
It's a rather remote and obscure.
Right. So we may be getting a referral for that one. If it's gone to the ZBA to do whatever they're doing, it looks like it might be in the process, so. That would be of interest. And the last one just would be CPF, and you're probably aware, but there was a public hearing September 27th for CPF to acquire 1040 Flanders Methodist Point. So I didn't, by the time I was going to write that email, that date had passed, but I assumed that someone had kept you in the loop on that. I saw it in the Southampton Press on September 22nd.
We were sent a copy of the resolution for the purchase.
So, okay. So Tim's taking care of that, so anyways, that's all I have.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Susan. Nothing on annual landmark inspections and the landmarks maintenance grant opportunity for nonprofits. Certified local government status.
Well, I think that we are in pretty good shape. I believe we have all the documentation that we need to actually submit to SHPO for their, as our application. So assuming that we get it in beginning of November, SHPO gets a statutory 60-day review period, given that we have a couple of major holidays in November and December. I expect that we should have some response from them in the first quarter of next year, and then we can take it from there. But I think we're in very good shape.
Okay.
Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
And thanks for it. Vicki organized a Zoom meeting today with this to cover with the liaison attorney for the Landmarks Board the matters that have got to be accomplished. So stuff seems to be, the package seems to be getting thicker and thicker as we go forward. So thanks for handling all of that. It's very helpful.
We'll stay on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anything else for us to consider among ourselves? I'll ask David if he's got something to add here.
This is just very quickly that, of course, we saw a number of passionate people who spoke, regarding Bridgehampton and preservation. That there are more positions open on the Landmark and Historic Districts Board. We could always use, from all areas of the town, use help if anybody wanted to apply for positions. And I'm thinking particularly if there's a push for the historic district, if there were more particular people from one area, that you could do the training in-house and maybe move that along quicker. So I'm not sure about that, but I'll just throw that out. Because particularly for the people, when you're writing a report in doing the site visits, that takes up time, that if you had another group dedicated to, a particular project, that may move it along a little quicker. I don't know.
I'd like some training.
With part,
I'd like some training.
Well, actually, if we get the CLG, we'll be able to apply for a grant to get funding for training, because that is a part of the CLG
because
package.
I'm not sure all, and I don't want to take the time now, all what Ed, because you and Julie, it was all during the pandemic, so a lot of it wasn't done at this meeting. It was done, however you could patch it together to move that along.
Believe me, we are patching a lot together these days.
But, I mean, I don't, because I don't, I don't have the checklist of what you need, and that's not what I'm not asking for that. But, so when I say move faster, I can't tell, I don't know what all you have done and what you have to do to get as far as you have gotten. And I applaud you for getting that far. So however we move it forward, we're gonna have to hear from you, because you are the authority. I mean, you're also, you are the authority on Bridgehampton.
Yeah.
That, what we need to do to put packages together and,
Yeah,
Okay.
I have no idea what to do. I live in Bridgehampton, I live in a historical house. If you understand what we have to put together, I'd like to help.
It was
somebody.
like, it was more than 15 years ago, so I'm sure some things have changed, but I'm
It's
happy to.
historical.
That's true,
Not
right?
much.
But, yeah, I love this kind of stuff, so I'll do some, pull up my files.
Okay.
I have one other just very minor thing. We had a woman who attended our last meeting. She was interested in landmarking her home at 3 East Pond Lane in Eastport. I think the information that she got at that meeting decided her mind for her, because she now has solar panels on her front roof. So I think that application should probably be considered moot. Do we have a process for, when an application is submitted, we consider it, we haven't really rendered an opinion on it formally one way or another, but since that last meeting, the condition of the house has changed further to become non-historic.
Solar panels are excluded from review by this board,
Mm-hmm.
But
unless it's a landmark.
Yeah.
we consider them in the landmarking process?
Yes.
Yes, right, and that was one of the questions she was weighing. She had previously submitted a proposal to put solar panels on the roof. She had been discouraged from doing that because she had, a historic home, and then she came back because she was interested in potentially landmarking and participating in the easement process and the maintenance program and all that. But because of the condition of the facade of her home, which was, had been almost entirely replaced by non-historic materials, I think we all had concerns about, certainly, I don't think she would have been eligible for an easement. And it still, I think, was a question of whether it would be deemed landmark worthy. And I think what she heard at that meeting made up her mind, and she went ahead and got the solar panels on the roof. So that's where we sit with that application. So I took it off the agenda.
Do you have anything to add here, anything further? So, if you did, you could step to the table and, okay, without any other consideration, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, CTV.